Wikileaks founder Julian Assange has been handed a legal lifeline by London's High Court after his extradition to the US was delayed. A Europe correspondent, Catherine Diss, is outside Britain's High Court in London. Catherine, good morning to you. So the US has been asked to make a number of assurances before the High Court judges make their final ruling.
Good morning, Michael. Yes, that's right. Look, two of England's most senior judges of the High Court have today surprised many by not delivering a judgment. They have surprised many by asking the US to provide assurances over Julian Assange's extradition to the United States, and that relates to whether the Australian was to face trial in America, whether he would be afforded the same rights to under the First Amendment freedom of speech to any US citizen, and also not face the death penalty if he was convicted. The US has been given 3 weeks to provide these assurances. If it doesn't, then the High Court here will grant Julian Assange a full right to appeal. Now, this wasn't the result that his legal team was looking for today. We heard from Stella Assange, who spoke outside court.
And yet, what the courts have done have been to invite a political intervention from the United States to send a letter saying it's all okay. I find this astounding.
Now, Julian Assange's legal team will appeal any assurances put forward by the United States. If the High Court here rejects those, it will take his case to the European Court of Human Rights, but there is no guarantee that that will be successful. So really, Julian Assange's only hope of freedom in the short term appears to be a diplomatic or political one, and in recent weeks that has appeared more of a reality than ever, with talks that a possible plea deal is underway with the Department of Justice in the United States.
Yes, we'll see how those play out behind closed doors, hopefully sometime in the next few weeks and months. Catherine, thank you.
The Wikileaks founder's brother, Gabriel Shipton, joins us now live from Melbourne. Good morning to you. Was this good news, bad news? What's the take on what we heard overnight from London?
Well, Julian lives to fight another day now. So we're relieved that the extradition wasn't ordered, but also very concerned that the judges have said yes, that he can appeal on 3 points, that the death sentence would not be, he would not face the death sentence if extradited, that he isn't discriminated against because he's an Australian, and that he has rights to freedom of expression. But what the judges have done today is given the US Department of Justice an opportunity to give assurances to those appeal points. So the US has 3 weeks to give those assurances, and Julian could be facing extradition in another 3 weeks. So it's still very concerning, but we have a limited amount of time now to really count down towards this 3-week deadline for these assurances. But I think what's really interesting is that the courts have asked the US to give Julian the same rights, the same First Amendment rights that would be enjoyed by US citizens, and I think that is a really interesting point, that previously Julian was being discriminated against because he was an Australian citizen. The prosecutors saying that he didn't enjoy the same First Amendment rights because he was Australian and not an American.
Yeah, so April 16th is now the next date. That's when the US Justice Department has to come back to the British High Court with those assurances about the death penalty and the freedom of speech. The Wall Street Journal last week was reporting on more movement from the US Justice Department, suggesting that they were considering allowing your brother to plead guilty to a lesser charge. Can you fill us in on anything to do with that? Is there any truth to those reports in the Wall Street Journal last week?
Well, Julian's lawyers made a statement in response to that reporting. That statement said that they hadn't had no communication from the Department of Justice regarding these leaked deal information. and that the Department of Justice was actually, continuing to pursue Julian with full force. So I believe that those, what else that article actually said was that this was a political hot potato for the Biden administration. And I think we're seeing that now, that the Biden administration and the Department of Justice is really looking for a way out of this scandalous prosecution. And the political pressure from around the world, from the Albanese government, from the German Chancellor, is actually paying off. And I think now is the time for the Albanese government and the Prime Minister to really ramp that pressure up and not just make these isolated representations, but to really take Julian's case into all their diplomatic negotiations with the United Kingdom and the US and say, we want Julian back, we want our citizen free, and that is going to affect all our relations with these two countries. So we're calling on the Albanese, the Prime Minister, to really ramp things up. On the 11th of April, Julian would have spent 5 years in a maximum security prison. He's not serving a sentence. He's there solely at the request of the US DOJ. His two children, who are now 5 and 6, are growing up without their father. We just want Julian to be able to be reunited with his family and live in peace.
And before you go, time zone challenges aside, have you been able to have any contact with him overnight or get any information about how he's taken this news? We know certainly the reports about his mental and physical health suffering.
Well, I think Julian is relieved that he's not on a plane to the United States. I spoke to Stella briefly this morning. So that's encouraging. But this is a very bizarre decision, and perhaps an opportunity for the Biden administration to really take another look at this case and bring it to an end and actually close it and drop it because of the threat to press freedoms around the world that it poses.